The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown.
I quote the Book of Numbers, chapter 13, verse 33.
We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them.
This is the only verse in the Bible that gives us a relative idea of their size due to the fact that the Israelite spies compare themselves to grasshoppers, which implies the Nephilim were massively tall and intimidating.
300 cubits tall, which equals 450 feet or 137 meters.
The Book of Enoch describes the Nephilim as giants who consumed everything and caused violence on earth. Now, let's make a quick comparison among the sizes of giants in the Bible. The Book of Samuel chapter 17 describes Goliath as being about 9 feet 9 inches, 3 meters. Og, the king of Bashan, a region east of the Jordan River, is depicted as a giant warrior king defeated by Moses and the Israelites during their conquest of Canaan. According to Deuteronomy 3 verse 11, his bed size is inferred to be 13 feet, 2.74 meters in length. Now that we know just how much of an outlier 137 meters is, let's try to compare what a Nephilim would eat, as compared to how much a normal 6-foot-tall human can. On average, a 70-kilogram human consumes about 2,500 calories on a daily basis. A 450-foot-tall Nephilim is 75 times taller than a 6-foot human. According to the square cube law, weight or mass scales by the cube of the height increase. This means if a human weighs 70 kilograms, a being 75 times taller would weigh 29.5 million kilograms. That's about 65 million pounds, which is roughly the mass of around 5,000 elephants. How much would our giant consume on a daily basis? Well, metabolism roughly scales with body mass, so our Nephilim would consume about 45 million calories per day. In food terms, this would equate to 18,000 kilograms of beef, or 40,000 pounds, or 170,000 slices of bread, or, if we want to get a bit gruesome, about 360 humans per day. Enoch 7:3-4-5.
They, the Nephilim, consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind.
The idea that these beings ate so much that they depleted human food sources, then resorted to cannibalism, is supported by this math. So let's assume they existed. Hypothetically, for this scenario, we shall explore what would happen to the Earth's ecology if 20 Nephilim were to exist today. Knowing what one Nephilim consumes a day, the daily total for 20 Nephilim would be 900 million calories. The global annual food production of planet Earth, as of 2025, is approximately 9 billion metric tons. This figure includes plants, meat, seafood, etc. For livestock, Earth's supply includes approximately 1.5 billion cattle, approximately 33 billion chicken, and approximately 5 billion pigs, sheep and goats combined. Arable land for farming is about 1.4 billion hectares, or 3.5 billion acres. The human population, as at 2025, is approximately 8 billion people. Now let's look at how long these 20 giants would need to collapse Earth's entire ecosystem. Imagine this. Humanity wakes up tomorrow to 20 newborns being delivered to 20 hospitals across the globe. These aren't ordinary babies. Each one will grow to stand 450 feet tall, the size of a skyscraper, their bones unbreakable, their appetites endless. This is what would happen if the Nephilim, the ancient giants from the Bible, were born again. 20 are born in 20 countries. At first, they're hidden, government secrets, fed in isolation, worshipped in secret cults. But as they grow, so does their hunger. In the first 3 years, Earth's agricultural systems face a growing but manageable threat, with 20 of these colossal beings steadily increasing in size and appetite. They collectively consume close to 400,000 metric tons of food in just that short span. While industrial farming operations, especially in wealthy nations, initially managed to absorb this extraordinary demand, the global supply chain begins to bend under the strain. Behind the scenes, the cracks widen. Food prices begin to spike dramatically as the volume of exports shrink and nations scramble to protect their own reserves. The poorest countries, already vulnerable to food insecurity, are the first to crumble. Famine breaks out in pockets of the world where the margin for error was already razor-thin. In wealthier regions, governments ration supplies and redirect military funding toward agricultural expansion, but it's not enough. To keep up, farming becomes more intensive and invasive. Forests are cleared at unprecedented rates, water sources are depleted, and fertilizer runoff poisons rivers. Ecosystems that have stood for centuries begin to break down as the natural balance of plant, soil, and insect life is disrupted. Still, the Nephilim continue to grow, and the world's ability to feed them, and itself, is already slipping. The countdown to collapse has begun. By the time the giants reach their 6th year of life, their collective consumption nearly doubles, totaling around 792,000 metric tons of food. What was once a global struggle to keep pace with their growing appetites has now become an unsustainable burden. National food reserves, built over decades for emergencies and crises, are drained completely. Governments that once relied on stockpiles to stabilize markets and feed the vulnerable find themselves helpless. The toll on livestock is catastrophic. Billions of animals, from cattle to poultry, are slaughtered not for markets, but simply to keep the giants fed for another day. As traditional food sources disappear, the giants trample across nations, their sheer size and movement alone destroying millions of acres of farmland. Crops are crushed underfoot. Irrigation systems are torn apart. What little remains is hoarded, stolen, or lost to decay as transportation networks collapse under the pressure of desperation. This marks the beginning of a true global famine. In less developed regions, hunger spreads like wildfire. In urban centers, chaos erupts as grocery stores empty and supply lines break. Within this short period, an estimated 1 to 2 billion people die, not directly from the giants, but from starvation, disease, and the ripple effects of infrastructure collapse. Panic turns into violence. Wars break out, not over ideology or borders, but over food. Entire nations become battlegrounds. Armies are deployed not to defend territory, but to protect grain silos. What was once a problem isolated to scientists and secret agencies is now an extinction-level crisis broadcast on every screen. The giants have become apocalyptic forces, and humanity is fighting for its life. By the time the Nephilim have reached their 10th year, they've consumed more than 1.3 million metric tons of food. The consequences of their unchecked appetite are catastrophic. At this stage, the damage is no longer just agricultural, it's civilizational. Roughly 80 to 90% of the world's livestock have been wiped out. Massive swathes of cropland, totaling tens of millions of acres, lie destroyed, trampled under the feet of giants, stripped bare by desperate overproduction, or abandoned after ecological collapse. Governments begin to fall one by one. First, it's the small and unstable nations, then the ones that once seemed untouchable. Global economies shatter under the weight of food shortages, inflation, mass migration, and conflict. The world order collapses into chaos. In just a few years, famine, war, and disease have killed off an estimated 6 to 7 billion people. Cities are no longer places of progress. They're hunting grounds or ghost towns. As infrastructure fails and resistance thins, the Nephilim begin targeting the last remaining population centers. Their presence is no longer a burden on Earth's resources, it is an existential threat. In some regions, the giants begin consuming humans directly, no longer waiting for war or famine to do the job for them. The age of civilization is over, and the age of survival, brutal and short-lived, has begun. By the 11th year, the final phase of human existence begins. With the Earth's ecosystems in ruins and all other food sources exhausted, the last billion humans become the giants' sole remaining source of sustenance. Over the next 4 years, The Nephilim consume them methodically, an average of 50 million people per year, roughly 137,000 every single day. Cities become feeding grounds, and the few who try to escape into hiding find there is nowhere left to run. At this stage, Earth's natural systems have already collapsed beyond recovery. The oceans are lifeless, choked by acidification and stripped of all marine biodiversity. Forests have been razed or died off entirely due to the climate chaos brought on by overexploitation and carbon saturation. Pollinators, bees, butterflies, birds have vanished, triggering a chain reaction in the food web. With no pollination, crops can no longer grow, and even the most resilient plants fail to survive. The biosphere enters a terminal freefall. Soil turns barren. The air grows toxic with methane and rot. Rain becomes acidic. Every living thing not consumed is dying from starvation, infection, or exposure to an environment that no longer supports life. By the end of year 14, the last human is gone, not just eaten, but erased from the world as a species. The Earth, once vibrant with civilizations and ecosystems, is now a husk, and still the giants remain, alone in a world they devoured. By the 15th year, Earth is unrecognizable. There are no crops left in the soil, only scorched fields and lifeless dust. The animals that once populated forests, skies, and oceans have all been hunted, consumed, or driven into extinction. Humanity is gone, reduced to nothing more than a memory, buried beneath the rubble of fallen cities and collapsed civilizations. The Nephilim have devoured over 2.6 million metric tons of food. They have outlived the entire biosphere, with no livestock to slaughter, no farmland to harvest, and no human beings to chase down and consume. They are left in isolation, colossal titans wandering a silent, empty earth, but their hunger has not faded. And in the stillness of a dead world, they begin to turn on each other. With no prey left but themselves, the final chapter becomes inevitable, a slow descent into cannibalism, betrayal, and self-destruction. Giants who once looked down on mankind now stalk one another, desperate to survive just one more day. By the time year 20 arrives, Earth is unrecognizable. The forests are gone, the oceans are lifeless, the skies hang heavy with ash and silence. Humanity has been wiped out, livestock extinct, and every crop-producing region has turned to dust. With no remaining food sources, the Nephilim are forced to turn on each other. Each of these giants, weighing approximately 29.5 million kilograms, or about 65 million pounds, is now both predator and prey. One fallen Nephilim can feed the others for 2 to 3 weeks, but this brutal solution only delays the inevitable. As their numbers dwindle, infighting becomes constant. Disease spreads quickly through the towering corpses and open wounds. With no means of reproduction, no sustainable food source, and their own strength declining from metabolic collapse, the last of the Nephilim slowly begins to rot from the inside out. By the end of year 22, none remain. The final giant dies alone, surrounded by the bones of its brothers and the ruins of a planet it helped destroy. The Earth, stripped bare, enters a long silence. If 20 Nephilim were born today, the world as we know it wouldn't last more than 2 decades. The collapse of food systems, the death of ecosystems, and the eventual extinction of humanity would unfold with terrifying speed. And that's assuming they didn't reproduce or turn on each other even earlier. The truth is, our planet simply isn't built to sustain hyper-consumers on such a massive scale. Even a small number would tip the balance toward destruction. But here's the thing. A literal 450-foot humanoid isn't just terrifying, it's scientifically impossible. At that size, the bones would snap under their own weight, the heart wouldn't be able to pump blood through the body, and basic biological processes, like oxygen diffusion or digestion, wouldn't function. No known organism, human or animal, can scale like that. Nature has limits, and giants of this magnitude break every one of them. So what do we make of ancient texts like the Book of Enoch, which describe these beings in vivid, monstrous detail? It's possible the descriptions were symbolic, exaggerations meant to represent uncontrollable power, corruption, or destruction. Or perhaps the Nephilim were never meant to be human at all. If they existed, maybe they weren't biological in the way we understand, perhaps divine, supernatural, or even something not of this world. Right now, there's no physical evidence of a lost race of true giants. No bones, no fossils, nothing that proves they walked the earth, but that doesn't mean we should dismiss everything outright. Science is constantly evolving. New discoveries shake what we think we know all the time. Maybe they existed, maybe they didn't. Maybe we're still not ready to understand what they really were. Until someone builds a time machine and travels back to see it for themselves, the truth remains buried, somewhere between myth, mystery, and the limits of human imagination. If you want more journeys like this into time, tech, and what it means to be human, hit subscribe and support the channel. Thank you for watching.